Hey, you guys, welcome back to Navigating Away from Lukewarm Living. I'm Zuli, I'm your host, and I just wanted to do a mini part two with Nathaniel. We spoke about his testimony last week, and this week I just kind of wanted to delve in more into his personal life and just ask him about that and see where it goes. And maybe there might be revelation for him, who knows? So, Nathaniel, the very first question I have for you, you're a father now. How has that changed your life and impacted your relationship with Abba?
It's a blessing. One, because I didn't want to have children, and two, because normally when we don't want something and then we're blessed with it, we never realize how much we actually needed it or how much it actually benefits us. Having a child, it makes me. I was already militant, but it makes me more militant, but also gentle at the same time. So it's like I'm very serious, but I'm gentle with the stuff I'm serious about, which is kind of like like saying it feels like it contradicts itself, but to me it makes sense because 9 times out of 10, when we're really serious about something or we're adamant about something, sometimes we're kind of aggressive with it or we're kind of like very linear with it. But with having a child, like I look at life and I'm like, I want him to be serious about things, but I don't want him to be serious and so serious to the point that he might destroy it at the same time. So it requires me to not move or budge on anything that I do, but make sure that I'm slower in my anger or I'm more gentle with the things that I touch or the things that I speak and say. Having a child kind of makes me look at life more and say that it's, of course, things are always bigger than me, but now it's not just me and my wife. I'm not just doing music or working or waking up every day for Abba, my wife, our dogs, and myself. Now I'm doing it for a child who then I have to make sure that whatever I leave behind when I leave this earth, like it's actually going to benefit him and not endanger him in any way. So, yeah.
One of the biggest things I've always heard about parenting and stuff like that is you truly never realize how much you can sacrifice until, you have a child and stuff like that. And I definitely, I haven't really talked about this on the podcast myself, but that's something that I also relate to. I did not want kids. I mean, I don't have any right now, but like I definitely was not the type like, oh my goodness, the baby's so cute. I'm like, get that thing away from me, So like I definitely do get that in a sense. Of when you don't want something, you're blessed with it, you realize how much you were missing out. And I think that's a beautiful thing that truly only our Father can truly do for us. So the next question I have, this one, a lot of introspection here. For couples that had much hardship and trust coming slowly like you did with your wife, what can you elaborate in regards to getting through that difficult refinement period?
To not expect things to fall within a time frame. A lot of times, and I'm still working on this, a lot of times we know what we desire and want, and even my wife, she knows what she desires and wants, but we have to not have such high expectations to think that we're going to receive it within the time frame that we want it in. So whatever, so I say a person may be married and they may want their husband to be more patient. Based off of what he's been through, it may take him a decade to become patient, but it doesn't mean he's not working at it. It just may take him a decade to reach the level of patience that a person says that they may need in order to survive or feel appreciated in the relationship. But in that waiting process of that decade, it teaches the other person, who could be the wife or could be the other spouse, whoever, it teaches that other person grace. It teaches them humility, and it teaches them to understand that they don't need someone to be patient with them in order to love better. Because Abba has always taught me that love is not an emotion, that it's an unconditional state of being. But society teaches us that love is an emotion because of their interpretation of Abba and what he's created. But if the scriptures tell us that Abba is love and love is Abba, then love can't be an emotion because Abba's not an emotion. He's a spirit. And the spirit is always unconditional. His spirit is always unconditional and it's always everlasting. So when I say to my wife, I love you, I'm saying that I am an unconditional state of being towards you right now, and it's not going to move or budge. Most people, when they say I love you, they speak off of an emotion. Emotions come and go and they fade. If Abba's love and love is Abba, he doesn't move. He doesn't fade. So I believe that in order for people, and I said it, I also put it in my book, What is Love? But I believe if people look at it that way, that it would help them navigate marriage instead of looking at it as we're in this together, and look at it and say we're in this because we're meant to be together. And I'm meant to serve you and you're meant to serve me in an unconditional way. And it shouldn't be based off of how you treat me. It should be based off of how Abba treats me and tells me to treat you.
You know, when you were talking, it made me think about how, you know, this can be a very controversial topic, but I think you're the perfect person to really speak about this, because, you know, I feel like you're the only person I've really talked about it with, at least. I know in our society, you know, things have changed a lot in the sense of like the feminist movement and everything. You know, a lot of young men, especially nowadays, don't know how to lead anymore. And then a lot of young women do not want to submit. But obviously, you know, I understand a lot of things have happened, you know, for this cultural change to happen. And, you know, maybe some people it works for them, some people it doesn't, you know, like we cannot hold people to a standard that they don't believe in, or just like they can't hold us to a standard that we don't believe in. But what would you say for somebody a young man or a young woman that's struggling to, you know, fall more into that role, and that would like to, not necessarily that they have to, but, you know, maybe they're having doubts or questions about like why the world is operating different, and why, you know, relationships perhaps are falling because of those roles?
From what Abba has shown me, and I'm gonna do my best to articulate it correctly, the world tries to categorize and compartmentalize scripture and words. And say, for instance, if you read the Hebrew English translation version of the scriptures, it's completely different from the 1599 Geneva Bible version, which was published in the 1500s. And that is different than the King James version, which was published sometime later. One of the things that we have to remember is that Abba literally tells us in the scriptures to not rewrite his word. And it's been rewritten and republished and redistributed so many different times that everyone's getting different interpretations of the word. And so instead of looking at the word and saying that this is the truth, you have to remember that this is part of the truth, and it's being reinterpreted and reworded. And when you look at it that way, it allows for you to look at all these other terms and phrases that people say. Like, I don't believe in the term masculinity, and I don't believe in the term femininity or feminism, because it's not in the scriptures. Like, if you're a man based off of the definition that Abba gave. If you're a woman based off of the definition that Abba gave. But when we try to look at each other and say, I'm better than a woman, then we have a problem, because now you're trying to be something that Abba never said that you are. He never said men are better than women. He said a husband is stronger than a wife because the wife is a weaker vessel. He never said men are better than women. He never said men are greater than women. He just said men receive a certain position just because of what is inside of the woman. That's it. And when women look at life and don't think, not just my wife and I was just talking about this yesterday. I also put this in my book, What is Love? But when you go back and you look at Adam and Eve, it literally tells you what man's problem is and what a woman's problem is. A woman's problem is that she desires to be more than what she created to be. Like, our heart is evil. So whatever inside of a woman's heart, it's inside of every woman's heart. Whatever is inside of a man's heart, it's inside of every man's heart. Eve desired to be more than what Abba said her purpose was. And that's a struggle that all women have. She desired to want to do more, want to be more, because she perceived that it was good, just like Eve did with the apple. And when she perceives that something is good and she gives it to herself, she ends up tainting or endangering someone else, because she doesn't realize that she's not meant to redistribute the thing that she was never meant to take on. That's not saying that women are not supposed to preach. That's not saying women are not supposed to lead. It's saying that women are supposed to be what Abba created them to be, and then not try to re-term or redefine their purpose. And that's it. And then a man is not supposed to redefine his purpose. A man should always lead, And if you have a wife and she gives you something, go to Abba and ask about it first before taking it from her. Not because you shouldn't trust your wife, but because you should trust the fact that she's human and she's going to make a mistake. And it's your job to always lead her. And it's your job to always take what she says into consideration. You don't have to look at what your wife is giving you and say, I don't want that. You can look at her, like I do this with my wife a lot. I look at my wife and I say, I appreciate it, but let me go to Abba about it. And I may not always word it that way, but she knows that I'm never going to take something that she says or something that she does without consulting Abba. And it's only because I trust that she's going to help me, but I also trust that this world does not raise up righteous men, and we do not raise up righteous women. I'm still having to learn to be righteous from unrighteous parents. And my wife is having to learn to be righteous from unrighteous parents. So in the process of becoming righteous, there's still unrighteousness inside of both of us that we have to be aware of, and we're not always going to be able to trust. Sometimes we catch each other and I might be saying something to her and I have to repent for it because I realized that I had well intentions, but I acted it out in an unrighteous way. And the same with her. And so when you take apart masculinity and put it to the side and take apart femininity and put it to the side, you realize that I'm just a man, I'm just a woman, I'm just a husband, you're just a wife, and we have our roles to play. The one is not greater than the other. Evil corrupts people and corrupts communication and behavior, and it makes us think that one is greater than the other. It makes us want to be greater than the other. But if we look at everything and separate ourselves from darkness and evil communication and terminology and the things that divide us, Abba never divides people. And if he does, it's for a purpose. So if you ever look through history and you see division, evil is in there somewhere. And if you ever look through history and you see people being against each other for something so simple as equal pay, evil is against each other. Same thing with black people. If you got people that's still trying to fight for equality, I always say, why do you want to be equal with the same place that oppressed you? I don't want to be equal with the nation that oppressed me. I'm trying to get out. I'm not trying to stay in, because why would I expect change from a place that shows me that it won't change? That's ignorance. If I keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again and then get upset when it's not changing, that's not wisdom. Abba tells us that wisdom is accept the things that you cannot change and change the things you can, and have enough wisdom to know the difference. You have to have enough wisdom to know that this country won't change. So you change and you accept that they won't change, and then you do something different that's according to his will. I believe if people look at it that way and not try to look at the world through the eyes of religion, and religion means law, so don't look at the eyes of all these different laws and all these different fragments of all these different laws. You got different umbrellas in each religion. You just look at it through uniquely what Abba says, which is a very narrow lens. And he tells us to follow a very narrow path. If you look at it in a very narrow lens, then it makes it difficult to kind of teeter-totter with different things, you know?
Thank you for elaborating, because I think that's a perspective, that's a point of view that not a lot of people get to hear or understand, because, you know, I think you're taking the words of, I know you're basing it off of scripture, what scripture says, what those words really mean, and it just reemphasizes how important our words are, in the sense of like what we allow ourselves to be, can't think of the word right now, but associated with. Yeah, there you go. That's the word that I was thinking about. And I appreciate that impact and, you know, what you're saying. So now we're going to be reflecting on yourself and beyond, essentially. So my next question for you is, how has your relationship with yourself and your own perception altered since following Jesus?
So I'm very critical and hard of myself. I don't necessarily require motivation from another person. I don't trust men, like men such as like the species of men. I don't trust men, and I'm very careful and cautious with who I call brother. And I'm very careful and cautious with understanding that when I call someone brother, that they may also betray me. So I believe in doing my best to become a person who follows righteousness and seeks spirit and truth, that my understanding has grown to where I'm not worried or frustrated over someone betraying me or saying certain things about me or speaking ill on me, because I know that that's a part of it. And it's not something I should want to go away. It's something that I should continually choose to embrace. And it allows for me to look at life without expectations. I don't expect for this world to change, and that's also one thing that I realize is different from me than a lot of musicians, even Bob Marley, Michael Jackson. They did things and were adamant about saying that the world has to change, and the world, we have to make the world a better place. And Abba tells us time and time again, the world's supposed to get worse. So when I look at the world, I don't look at it and say the world is meant to change or the world needs to change. I look at it and say, I just need to be a light in the world, and I need to be a light that's different from the darkness that exists in the world. And I need to encourage people to change, and not change the world, but I need to encourage individuals to change so that way they can become separate from the world. And I believe following truth and following spirit and following the pathway, to Abba it's a repetitive lesson of, I guess, what people call dying to yourself. Like when I look at my mistakes or I look at things that I don't do completely correct, I'm very tough on myself. Like I won't eat. I just space out. I'm just very self-critical, and that's something I will encourage a lot of people to do. Don't stay stuck in it, but at least become so gross with yourself in terms of like when you do something wrong, like become remorseful. A lot of times we have a habit of making mistakes and we just move on from it. But if we actually sit a little bit long on those mistakes and actually find a way to not like the part of ourselves that caused those mistakes, it forces us to change that part of ourselves so that way we won't feel that way again. And I also believe that from what Abba has taught me is that realizing that I'm meant to strive to perfection, even though I may never necessarily reach it. And that even though my sins will be forgiven, and the pathway of my sins of being forgiven is already made known and clear. And it's not something I always have to stress about. It's just known. The path is there. The way to the Father is there. And I just have to follow it. That's it. It's not a big puzzle. It's not a big mystery. The mystery of it is everything else that Abba has not revealed. And that part I have to be okay with. But just following that straight and narrow path, and then just playing my role and just doing my best to forgive and have faith and not lean onto my own understanding and let Abba use me like a chess piece. That part has improved because I don't have to be a master of my faith. I don't have to be a master of my gifts. I just have to have a master and make sure he's the one true master, and just use my gifts and make sure I exercise my faith accordingly. And that's it.
That's a word right there. Not a master of my faith, but remember that I have a master. Yeah, that's a very great reminder, because I feel like everyone, how the worldly saying goes or whatever, you're your own worst critic more often than not. But repeating that phrase also can inhibit that in individuals as well, so we have to be very careful about saying that. But that's a great reminder, even for people who tend to be hard on themselves, that it's like how you said, remember that I don't have to be a master of my faith, but rather remember that I have a master itself. So I have one final last question for you. What advice do you have for young men or women that were on a similar path that you used to be on and that like to change?
So every young man and woman should know that everything you're going through, in the grand scheme of things, it seems big, but it's very finite. It's very small. It's very small in comparison to the rest of the life that you have to live. And if you allow for those moments to get the best of you, you can potentially shorten your life, or you can potentially not have a life anymore. And when you get to a point to where you want to take someone's life, that's when you need to ask for help. It doesn't have to be help from a person, but you need to ask help from Abba, because there's a thing inside of you that you always have to redirect, and that needs to be taken away. And that's a gradual process. And we live in a very imperfect world, and this world has gotten further away from Abba over the course of 2,000 and 3,000 years, that know that it is normal. It's not supposed to be normal, and Instagram, social media, and television and entertainment does not make it seem like it's a normal thing. But it's normal for your parents to hurt you. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's normal. Why? Because the scriptures tell us. It's normal for you and your parents to not get along. It's normal for y'all to see things in a different way. It's normal for you to be an outcast. It's normal for you to feel insecure or misguided, because those are the people that Abba wants to use the most. And when we look at everything and we don't kind of have like a main character type of perspective, we realize that everyone else around us is literally going through the same exact thing. Because Abba tells us that when it comes to sin, everyone has to overcome the same sin. It's just that the process of overcoming it looks different from every person. Everyone has to overcome lust. Some people lust over materialistic things. Some people lust when it comes to the flesh. And some people lust just after whatever else exists other than that I may not know. Everyone has to overcome lust. Everyone has to overcome a form of greed. Everyone has to overcome a form of pride and selfishness and ego and depression and anxiety, fear. Everyone has to overcome literally the same exact thing. And when we look at it that way, it allows for us to be able to be more kind and gentle and an expression of love to another person, because everyone is literally going through a hardship that you just can't see, because the world teaches us to not reflect what we're going through. So we do our best to make sure that we put on a facade and that we're able to smile even though we may be in a lot of pain, because we're taught that people are not going to pity you. People are not going to have sympathy for you. People are not going to have empathy for you. And it forces us to become more hard. It forces us to become more linear and direct and distrusting of people, because we're taught that people are never going to have your best interests. And if we can change our direction as people, it allows us to become better members. Because, say, for instance, we may be members of one body, but as members of one body, we have to function together. And when members don't function together, certain members start passing away, because my functioning may be dependent off your functioning. And if you don't function correctly, then it impacts my functioning. And if my functioning is impacted, then it impacts the functioning of the next person I'm connected to. And so when you look at being members of a body, everything depends on one another. My head depends on my feet, and my feet depends on my head. If my head and my brain no longer works, then I just have a body that's capable with no direction. Likewise, if the rest of my body doesn't work, but my head works, and I have a head that's capable, but it lacks the ability to move in a direction. And so when we look at that, we always consistently have a head. We have something that can turn us. We have something that can direct us, and we have something that can guide us. We just have to make sure that we allow for ourselves to be moved, so that way in the process of that thing guiding us, that we're going in the right way with it. But in this world, because there's so many different denominations and congregations and modern day Pharisees and Sadducees, everyone says that they're members of a body, but they're going in different directions. And when you look at life on earth as a young person, you don't think about the fact that there's only 144,000 people that are chosen to be like great standing in Abba's eyes. There's almost 1 trillion people or more on this earth. That means everyone around you is not getting it right. There may be only one person that you've ever met on this earth that is getting it right. And that's something that as a young person, it's best to start looking at life now, because if you can start walking in righteousness at a young age, it makes getting older less challenging. Like, because life is already going to have its challenges, but it makes it more bearable to have a path that you're supposed to be on, so that way you can endure those challenges instead of trying to find a path and then getting beat up in the process through different like evil spirits. So every young person should just think about that, and then don't be in a rush to get married, and don't be in a rush to have someone to cling on to or have someone to do life with, because if you don't even know what life is, and if you don't know the father who you're always supposed to be doing life with, then you want to do a life with a person while not doing life right, and that doesn't make sense. You want to do life right with the person because you're getting it right, not life right with a person as you're trying to get it right, because then that person may be getting it right, but then because you're not getting it right, you may impact that person's journey. And it's not a matter of finding somebody and being perfect. It's just a matter of finding somebody and know that you should strive for perfection, and then y'all can do it together. And then y'all can exercise forgiveness, and y'all can exercise grace and different strengths, and you can become better at being a reflection of Abba's love for his children and each other. And that's what young people should strive to realize. I mean, there's more, but there's not enough time to do that. But yeah.
Well, Nathaniel, I appreciate all of the insights that you've given, and I truly do feel like the Father was speaking to you, through you on this episode. Both, either way. That's going to be the end of our episode for today on navigating away from lukewarm living. I'm your host, Suli, and like I said, I appreciate your time here, and as always, have a blessed day.